All right, let's dive into this explainer. We're looking at a pretty wild collision today, the 2026 FIFA World Cup. It's the world's most popular sport, promising unparalleled global unity, but it's crashing headfirst into the rigid real-world constraints of the United States, Canada, and Mexico. As we'll see, the defining story of this tournament started long before the opening whistle even blew.
Now, here's the massive tension we're seeing. How does the most inclusive World Cup ever, we're talking 48 teams here, become its most restricted and expensive? FIFA pitched this as a global party, right? But as we're going to unpack, for so many fans, officials, and even the players themselves, simply accessing the host countries, let alone affording a seat inside the stadium, has turned into an absolute hurdle.
Just think about this number for a second. $32,970. No, that's not a typo. That is the actual price a top-tier final ticket hit on the official market just weeks before kickoff. It totally shatters what anyone expected and really makes you stop and wonder, is football actually still a game for the masses?
And then there's this number, 11. That is 11 hours. That's exactly how long Omar Abdulkadir Artan, a FIFA-appointed referee from Somalia, was interrogated at the U.S. border in Miami. And after all that, he was deported right back to Istanbul. The guy had a perfectly valid visa, went through a rigorous 3-year FIFA selection process, and his dream was just abruptly halted by host nation vetting concerns.
So the real takeaway here is this massive, glaring gap between what was idealized and promised to secure the tournament and the harsh commercial realities we're dealing with today. Back in 2018, when the US, Canada, and Mexico won the bid, they officially promised the most expensive final ticket would be capped at $1,550. Fast forward to May 2026, they introduce airline-style dynamic pricing, and boom, that official top price skyrockets to almost $33,000. It's just wild.
Moving into our first section. The controversial kickoff. This is a tournament defined before it even began.
Section 2, Borders and Denied Entries, the Immigration Roadblock.
These detentions, they are definitely not random flukes. It's a systemic clash. Just look at the sheer variety of people getting caught in this vetting net. We already talked about our referee, Omar Artan, but you've also got Ayman Hussein, an Iraqi striker who was detained and had his phone searched for 7 hours in Chicago. Iraq's team photographer was held for over 10 hours and ultimately denied entry. And honestly, it's not even just officials from certain regions. Even Scottish fans were reporting having their visa waivers suddenly revoked right before they were supposed to travel.
Now, to be completely objective, let's look at the U.S. government's perspective. Customs and Border Protection put out this statement defending their process. Basically, from their point of view, the World Cup does not hit pause on national security. Every single traveler, whether you're a literal star athlete on the pitch or a fan with a ticket, you're subject to the exact same strict, case-by-case admissibility checks.
Meanwhile, geopolitical tensions got so incredibly complicated that the Iranian team had to literally set up camp in a completely different country. Because several of their key support staff were denied U.S. visas amid ongoing political conflicts, Iran based themselves down in Tijuana, Mexico. They're training under heavy security with armed patrols, and they're literally forced to physically commute across the U.S. border into LA and Seattle just to play their games. It's pretty surreal.
All right, Section 3, Labor, ICE, and Security, the view from the stadium. We also need to look at what's happening internally. America's largest federation of unions, the AFL-CIO, raised some really grave concerns in this official May 2026 letter. They were super worried about the presence of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, right at the stadiums. The workers who were actually preparing the venues, along with local communities, were terrified of unannounced enforcement actions happening during the tournament.
And those concerns didn't just come out of nowhere. They followed this direct confirmation from the Secretary of Homeland Security on national TV. He clearly stated that ICE agents would absolutely be operating at the venues as part of the overall security setup, and noted that, well, immigration enforcement is always a core part of what they do.
Backed by union leadership like AFL-CIO President Elizabeth Schuler, this letter demanded absolute transparency from FIFA. You see, they were especially worried about the accreditation process. Worker info was being run through FBI databases, and that sparked some massive fears regarding privacy and potential targeted deportations.
So the bottom line here is that labor groups felt this massive security apparatus was creating an unsafe environment for the exact same people building and running the games. They demanded promises that credentialing data wouldn't be weaponized against workers. It really highlights this intense domestic tension bubbling just beneath the surface of the matches.
Moving on to Section 4, the cost of fandom.
commerce, and broadcasting.
Let's talk money, because basic affordability essentially went out the window. We're looking at almost a 9-fold price jump just to get in the door for a standard group stage match. It went from $11 in Qatar 4 years ago to a minimum of $100 for the absolute cheapest equivalent seat in 2026.
And because this was the first time dynamic pricing was ever used in this way, the situation just spiraled. I mean, when prices shift based on demand, things get out of hand incredibly fast. On FIFA's own official resale portal, some final tickets were listed for over $2 million. Can you believe that? $2 million. It became such a massive issue that the state attorneys general for New York and New Jersey actually stepped in and slapped FIFA with a formal legal subpoena to investigate what was going on.
And hey, it wasn't just tickets, it was broadcasting too. Over in India, a crazy game of brinksmanship almost caused a total blackout for 1.4 billion potential viewers. FIFA initially wanted $100 million for the rights. JioStar, India's biggest streaming platform, countered with about $20 million and literally walked away. It wasn't until 9 days before the opening kickoff that Z Entertainment swooped in with a $40 million deal, finally making sure the world's most populous country could actually tune in.
Which brings us to Section 5, the real-world collision. What this all means.
So let's tie all of this together. Whether we're talking about a 6.1 magnitude earthquake shaking up training camps in Florida, the Uzbekistan team getting searched by drug-sniffing dogs and metal detectors in New York, or deported referees, these are not just weird, isolated footnotes. They're all symptoms of a much larger systemic clash. FIFA absolutely needed the massive scale, the infrastructure, and the revenue of its North American hosts, but that scale came with severe security protocols, intense commercial pricing cultures, and geopolitical realities that a soccer tournament simply cannot magically override.
I'm going to leave you with this final thought to ponder long after this explainer ends. In an era of unprecedented scale, extreme security vetting, and ticket prices so high they literally spark legal investigations, who exactly is the modern World Cup truly built for? Is it still a global festival for the everyday masses, or has it transformed into a highly guarded, exclusive event for the elite? Keep asking those questions, and keep looking beyond the pitch.